opportunity. You may spend most of your career as a high-powered CEO, and then you retire, but you could then move into a phase where you wouldn't have so much responsibility, you wouldn't have so much stress in your life, and at the same time could give to society by doing a job that would be a lot less skillful, but still a great contributor to society. And I think it's a really good point you make.
In addition to that, I can give you an example of that. For example,
let me begin with Anis. Given the framework of the discussion and the disruption of the fourth industrial revolution, what should a government's priorities be from the point of view of policy in terms of planning for the future? You belong to a country with a big population, with a growing population, and a huge proportion of young people who are going to be really impacted by these changes.
Thank you. I think that the challenge that we have in Indonesia is also perhaps similar to many developing countries across the globe. Preparing our youth, preparing our next generations to be part of the fourth industrial revolution's era. And for that, look at our profile or our pictures today. I said yesterday, the phenomenon that we are facing. Our students were 21st century students. Our teachers were 20th century teachers. And our classroom is 19th century classrooms. And this is perhaps a phenomenon that is faced. Thank you. I think that the challenge that we have in Indonesia is also perhaps similar to many developing countries across the globe. Preparing our youth, preparing our next generations to be part of the fourth industrial revolution's era. And for that, look at our profile or our pictures today. I said yesterday, the phenomenon that we are facing. Our students were 21st century students. Our teachers were 20th century teachers. And our classroom is 19th century classrooms. And this is perhaps a phenomenon that is being faced across the globe. And I think to improve this, or to tackle these gaps, government need to focus on empowering stakeholders. In our case, stakeholders of education. And the key stakeholders of education are parents and teachers. These are two agents that is often overlooked whenever we're talking about preparing our next generations. Teachers, we focus so much on teachers, but parents are often overlooked. And they are the most important, they are the first, but they are the least prepared agent to prepare for the next generation. So focusing on that. But the other thing that is also critical is as we are undergoing these transformations, many of the jobs that we are now seeing may disappear. That is been said many, many times. And when it comes to education, the questions is often raised. Can teachers be replaced by technology? Can then we ask technology to help preparing our next generations? I often approach it in a different slant. What kind of teachers is replaceable by technology? What kind of teachers is not replaceable by technology? And I think this is similar to any other jobs available. As we are transforming ourselves, we need to equip ourselves with the new competence, new skills that made us irreplaceable in that sense. The other aspect that is critical is, especially in the area of education, is we need to add what we bring into our classroom. In the past, we focused so much on what we often call as 3R. Reading, writing, and arithmetics. Now we need to add with literacy in terms of financial literacy, cultural literacy, information technology literacy. And on top of that, the World Economic Forum produced a report 2 months ago on the importance of the 21st century competence, that is creativity, critical thinking, collaborations, and communications. So the challenge that we are now facing, disparities, and then we have to prepare the next generations for the challenge that we are not yet seeing the reality, then our preparations is to enable them to be part of the future by equipping with the 4 C's that I mentioned earlier.
So I just want to follow up one point that you made when you talked about 19th century classrooms. So on a practical level, what is your ministry doing to, let's say, upgrade the hardware? And again, on a specific level, what is your ministry doing to upgrade the quality of your teachers? Parents you can't control. You can never control the parents.
Yes, and they don't want to be controlled. Number one, the phenomenon of 19th century classroom is everywhere. The setting of our classroom is still in the period of the third industrial revolution's era, that we prepare our teachers to be an instructor in the classroom. And that's why the setting is teachers as instructor. Now teachers is more a facilitator. So number one that we're doing is training the teacher to shift the role from instructor into facilitator. So what we did is we're launching a massive teachers training across the country. The size is rather big. We have 2.9 million teachers under our authority. And on top of that, the infrastructure itself, we choose not to change in terms of changing the setting of the classroom or anything, no. But we focus more on the teachers, we focus more on making technology available, especially information communication technology. So what we do is we are, for example, we're preparing our exams into a computer-based exams. The idea is to make our exams be an interactive exams, and we're able to provide much of the innovations into our exams. Otherwise, with this large number of students, we will not be able to do that. So, providing technology in our schools, enabling teachers to change its role from instructor into facilitator through trainings. And the fourth one is actually, we're doing it, we are creating a directorate on parenting education. Yes, indeed. And we created this directorate. The idea is to facilitate learning among parents. So successful parents were being interviewed, they share their stories and experience, and we put it into our system that we then distribute it to parents across Indonesia. Through whom? Through our schools. So now, schools were required to invite parents twice per semester, and the materials that we have from lesson learned from other parents were being distributed to them. The idea is we have to make sure teachers and parents understand that we all are learners. If you want to be part of the futures, then you really have to understand that we are learners, not only the students, but also the teachers and parents. And so those are the three things that we're doing.
Well, that's edifying. I think all of us would like to sit in on one of these classrooms. I want to turn to the people in this group who are in the private sector. Kathleen, you're part of a big company, quite diversified conglomerate. When you look at the recruits...
Presumably corporations will make a lot more profit because they have their labor costs will continue to reduce as a percentage of their income. The profitability will increase, Will you say then in government, oh, we're going to charge you more tax now because you have to pay for the re-education of the workers that you're laying off? Will that be something, I would ask, that might come about in the future as well within governments?
Anis?
Yeah, to continue what just said earlier, I think we need to see a closer partnership between the corporations and government, especially in the area of education. You know what Kathleen mentioned earlier, that you need to train the graduates. I think we need to do that within the school framework, that the school invite corporations as part of the stakeholders to educate the students. And we are, to give you an example, is our vocational trainings, that it is a 3-year program, 2 years in school, 1 year in corporations. But that's not enough. So I think we need to expedite the process. What we need as well is to invite school principals to come to corporations and be there and experience the kind of challenge that their student will have to face. Because if the school principals understand the challenge, they know how to translate that into their school system. Because we cannot just assume teachers and students experiencing the future challenge later on, but the school principals. So closer cooperations between corporations and schools or a government is needed, but also allowing school principals to be in corporations. So private sector should actually open up their doors to invite not only students, but school principals to come, or education leaders to come and experience, taste the future, and bring back to schools and prepare their children.
I would,
Yeah.
I wanted to just add to and respond to, I'm sorry, I'll mention as Lawless.
I said you can call me Lawless. The name is Gerald anyway, don't worry, forget it.
Okay. I would argue that the education ministries across Southeast Asia, if you look at, have a very robust budget, right? It's not the investment which is a gap, in my opinion. The gap, I would agree, one of the gaps is the public-private participation and ability to work together to address the needs. And I can cite a couple of examples where we have done this better.
People with nothing to do in your country?
So many things worrying me, whenever we're talking about the youth. But automatizations is nothing new. We had experienced this in the past. When we had a transformations from agriculture society to industrialized, for example, all of us used to work producing food, almost all of us. And then we're undergoing these transformations. What it did is, it's not that we're going to compete against machine. I think what's going to happen is that automatization will take place, new kind of jobs will be created, and that we will be doing other new interesting jobs using new technologies. So what's now important for us is to understand that in our effort to prepare the future talents, maybe we need to focus not so much on giving specialized kind of educations, but perhaps the future doesn't belong to specialized. Perhaps the future belongs to generalized. Someone who is able to do various different things that perhaps can change from one job to another. So the spirit that perhaps we have to adopt is the spirit that we may not be preparing for specific things, but we need to prepare for all kinds of things. And to do that, assessment is key. Well, Kathleen.
I'd love to come in because I think it's a great point, especially for older people, and it is talked about a lot. No, it's a serious point, is that the opportunity, you may spend most of your career as a high-powered CEO, and then you retire, but you could then move into a phase where you wouldn't have so much responsibility, you wouldn't have so much stress in your life, and at the same time could give to society by doing a job that would be a lot less skillful, but still a great contributor to society. And I think it's a really good point you make.
In addition to that, I can give you an example of that. For example, retired teachers now providing services through online courses.
Yes.
And what they do is they use technology, and they said, you know, I've been teaching math for 20, 35 years, I've retired, now I want still to contribute, and this is the way.
Or mentoring and everything,
mentoring,
which is
right.
really good, and coaching.
So I think we may be worrisome about this issue, but let's not assume that equilibrium is static. The equilibrium is dynamic. We will be seeing a new balance on one thing, you know, with automatization, but on the other hand, we will also be seeing transformations of other things that we don't focus it yet. That's why I think for us, perhaps we need to prepare more generalist than specialist, perhaps.
Do you think we'll have aircraft without pilots?
Yes.
To be honest,
Yes.
It came up at a morning session that I was at, where Tony Fernandez of Air Asia said it would save him a lot of money, but he doesn't know if anybody would be willing to pay to fly in those.
You could have an avatar in the cockpit.
We've been talking a lot about developing homegrown talent. There's another source of talent, and that's through migration. So Mari Pangestu, who used to be in the previous administration in Indonesia, made the point yesterday at the plenary session, I think a lot of you would have been there, about having talent cross borders. But when we look specifically at ASEAN and surveying 15 developed and emerging economies, and they calculated that in the next 5 years there'll be a net loss because of automation, a net loss of 5.1 million jobs. Why is this important? Because 3 years ago, Ravi Luar of the Straits Times, I believe he's in the audience here, flagged the danger of jobs as a national security issue. It means when you don't have enough jobs for young people in particular, they, as he wrote, jobs not only boost purchasing power in domestic markets, but they also keep people busy and focused. And if not busy and focused, then they do other things. So the demographic dividend, he wrote, could turn into a disaster. So is the fourth industrial revolution a threat or an opportunity or both? Or how do you balance the scales? Kathleen? No, yeah, Kathleen first, and then Gerald, I think you're busting to say something.
Yeah, I mean, how I see this, this has been discussed a lot, I think, over yesterday and today, and what technology is going to do. And I think, as Prakash has said, there will be a demand for jobs of for people with high cognitive skills. People need to, the people who are really good at developing programs, to develop. I mean, AI needs people to develop. The people with high skills, will get more and more better jobs. And my concern is this, yes, that, the middle level, the clerical, the bookkeepers, and all these people really will be without jobs. And what do you do with them? They could drop down to the next level because these jobs no longer exist. They can't do the very high performing jobs. And you then, bifurcate the population. And technology has the ability to create a lot of low-skilled jobs too. So, architect was saying, oh, now, I can detect a leak in my house because of Internet of Things. You can actually install these leak detectors who just tell you there's a leak and comes into your phone. But what do? You still got to call the plumber at this point, unless you have a home robot, it fixes it. But you can't. So you call your plumber, and your plumber has to go to fix it. So as more and more of these things evolve, you might find that these jobs are created, but low-skilled jobs. And, I think government really needs to step in to create some equity here. They have to have one social safety net for jobs that might disappear in the short term as people are reskilled and retrained, and kind of more equitable labor policies. If you like minimum wage, I'm concerned as well about in the agricultural sector, where you still need a lot of labor. And as you go forward, I mean, the Internet of Things might help you do some of it, but like harvesting of all palm fruits, I mean, I can't see it's going away for a long time, that you need the human skill. So then society will become, for the very rich, very clever, and then for the very unskilled and low-paid jobs. So I think government has a huge role to play in this.
Yes, there's a potential for instability there. Gerald, and then maybe Anisman, given the young population you have in your country.
Well, first of all, I think you can all come and work in the hotel business and we'll be able to look after you. But I do think it's very interesting what you start to touch on as well as the social side. I mean, we hear people almost ridicule, to an extent anyway, the 35-hour working week in France. Now they're rioting on the streets in France because there's going to be a slight change in that they can work up to 46 hours with overtime. But, for most of us, we say, wow, you'll do 35 hours in 3 or 4 days probably. But I think that governments have to start looking as well as, especially in developed countries, there might be an issue where a 35-hour working week might not be so silly if you want to talk about using up surplus labor that's in the workforce. And also, particularly of particular interest to my age group, is we've seen the trend over recent years, again, particularly in the West, of the lengthening of the working age. So you now don't retire until you're 67. So from that perspective, I think as well, we might start bringing the retirement age forward again. And I'd imagine these trends would definitely have to start coming in. The other huge issue is flexibility of work, and that was just touched on at the last session, is that I think particularly in our industry, in travel and tourism, we have about already 59% of our undergraduates in our hotel schools, for example, would be female. And I think that for women, and I'm sorry if I speak on your behalf to an extent, but I do think that we need to be a lot more flexible as employers in terms of job sharing, in terms of working from home, in terms of having creche or looking after the children within the workplace would certainly help us an awful lot to ensure that people can elect to work differently and to have that flexibility built in, which we're still too rigid in our approach as far as I'm concerned, and I believe strongly.
Well, thank you for that. Anis, are you worried that you're going to have too many young people with nothing to do in your country?
So many things worrying me, whenever we're talking about the youth. But automatizations is nothing new. We had experienced this in the past. When we had a transformations from agriculture society to industrialized, for example, all of us used to work producing food, almost all of us. And then we're undergoing these transformations. What it did is, it's not that we're going to compete against machine. I think what's going to happen is that automatization will take place, new kind of jobs will be created, and that we will be doing other new interesting job using new technologies. So what's now important for us is to understand that in our effort to prepare the future talents, maybe we need to focus not so much on giving specialized kind of educations, but perhaps the future doesn't belong to specialized, perhaps the future belongs to generalized. Someone who is able to do various different things that perhaps can change from one job to another. So the spirit that perhaps we have to adopt is the spirit that we may not be preparing for specific things, but we need to prepare for all kinds of things. And to do that, assessment is key. Well, Kathleen.
I'd love to come in because I think it's a great point, especially for older people, and it is talked about a lot. No, it's a serious point, is that the opportunity, you may spend most of your career as a high-powered CEO, and then you retire, but you could then move into a phase where you wouldn't have so much responsibility, you wouldn't have so much stress in your life, and at the same time could give to society by doing a job that would be a lot less skillful, but still a great contributor to society. And I think it's a really good point to make.
In addition to that, I can give you an example of that. For example, retired teachers now providing services through online courses.
Yes.
And what they do is they use technology, and they said, I've been teaching math for 20, 35 years, I've retired, now I want still to contribute, and this is the way.
Or mentoring and everything.
Or mentoring,
which is
right.
really good, and coaching.
So I think we may be worrisome about this issue, but let's not assume that equilibrium is static. The equilibrium is dynamic. We will be seeing a new balance on one thing, with automatization, but on the other hand, we will also be seeing transformations of other things that we don't focus it yet. That's why I think for us, perhaps we need to prepare more generalist than specialist, perhaps.
Do you think we'll have aircraft without pilots?
Yes.
To be honest.
Yes.
It came up at a morning session that I was at, where Tony Fernandez of AirAsia said it would save him a lot of money, but he doesn't know if anybody would be willing to pay to fly in those planes.
You could have an avatar in the cockpit.
We've been talking a lot about developing homegrown talent. There's another source of talent, and that's through migration. So Mari Pangestu, who used to be in the previous administration in Indonesia, made the point yesterday at the plenary session, I think a lot of you would have been there, about having talent cross borders. But when we look specifically at ASEAN, and not just ASEAN, but the global mindset right now is not very much in favor of migration. You've got the refugee crisis, you've got anti-globalization trends, you've got the threat of terrorism, and you've got a lot of protectionist barriers still in place within ASEAN. Prakash, is talent migration a good source of recruits and talent for you, or do you actually encounter challenges and barriers to that in your region, which is Southeast Asia?
I think talent migration could be an issue, but Intel specifically, if I look at my hiring within Intel, we haven't been challenged to that extent on migrating talent from, if you're talking within Southeast Asian countries or outside of Southeast Asia. So for example, I grew up in India and I relocated to Singapore about 10 years back, and now I'm a Singapore citizen and I look after Southeast Asia. So what would you call me? So to be honest, if you look at talent and the view of talent within the company, most companies adopt the same thing, same approach, I would argue, is development or growth on the career side is dependent on few things. One of the biggest thing is flexibility. Are you flexible enough to move locations, to do different jobs you're being asked to? If you're not flexible, the opportunities come very few, very rare. If the opportunities are multiple and you take advantage of them by being flexible, you get faster growth. And to answer your specific question in terms of whether migration will be a challenge for governments to address, to be honest, perfectly honest, talent will move to the best opportunity possible. And if you think about all the technology, the fourth industrial revolution, the usage models evolving, people with highest amount or capacity of cognitive skills, they would land jobs where they think they can best add value. The real question in everybody's mind as an employee would be, what value will I add? And if the value addition is going to be higher than where you are based, being a citizen in a country or being an expat in another country, you would move to that place, in my opinion.
The floor, questions from the floor, anyone? Please.
Thank you. I'm Trimumpuni from Indonesia, social entrepreneur. One thing that I do not see here, that's people never treat people that actually has uniqueness. We forgot human being bring uniqueness. And when you're talking about automation, you're talking about all different mass production and all mass jobs, but we have to think that the current situations is forgetting about creating competency but not losing the uniqueness of the students in the education. I give you a very clear example. There is some questionnaire was made for the Harvard students before they entering the Harvard. What are you going to do for your future? There are so many interesting, I want to do something in Guatemala doing something good thing in Southeast Asian countries, all really something that preparing themselves, to be useful for other peoples, But after 3 years, coming to get this, degree in Harvard, and then you are a graduate, suddenly another questionnaire was giving a very surprising answer. They want to be a CEO, the top 10 of Slumberjee, of Exxon, of everything. So something missing here, that's from the uniqueness, you create a uniform. With this problem you're facing now, joblessness, everything, I would like to really, ask each of you, where do we put this uniqueness of human being in the education system? Maybe this will be, I don't know, a challenge for our future, and then how we would like to overcome that situation.
Kathleen, would you like to take that
Yeah,
first?
I'd really love
because
to
you've
take
sort of
that.
indicated that you've thought about this.
Yeah. I think, I think you've hit on a really good point for me. My big issue, we work a lot with schools. So in my company, and we're a conglomerate, and one of the things we do is we have an education platform, a virtual learning platform, and it's delivered to all 10,000 schools in this country. And what I find with the school curriculum today, and I think we know we need to change it, and I said this chasing after A's, which is the problem today, is we seem to have taken, the human character out of our education system, the values education, character education, the things that make us resilient as human beings, as you say, to be able to do many jobs, to change jobs, to be prepared for change. You need someone, who's resilient, who has integrity, who's honest, all these values. And I feel that today, so much of that, schools are very secular. In the past, I think some, religious schools still kind of brought these values in the schools. But today, because everybody just wants an output, what's the input? The output is how many A's or how many B's or whatever, and you've lost the human character. And I think teachers need to be told now that they are role models, that they are character models, that the training is not just training about how to deliver some of these skills that are essential, but the training is to be the role model and how to make your students people of good character.
Prakash, do you get people at Intel who want to change the world for the better?
Absolutely. I fundamentally believe Intel has changed the world for the better. And that's responsible. Employees are responsible for it. And I think to answer your question from my point of view, and to the earlier question that you had asked on whether it's an opportunity or not, the new technology that is coming through, I really think there is more opportunity than risk, simply because technology provides you the platform to do things that you have never done before. And if you are thinking about robots taking over the world on repetitive tasks, there will be people who would have to build those robots, who would have to package them, who would build software for them. So the industry will evolve towards creating support structures for movement, right? And about uniqueness, I honestly believe that uniqueness, that's the differentiation between human beings and machines. And one of the big things, even within ASEAN context, we could do better on, because it is a predominantly young population, is to create an environment where younger generation can create, can make, rather than just consume. Because the issue I see is highest penetration of smartphones across all 6 countries in ASEAN, probably all the 10 countries. But everybody is consuming content. Nobody is creating stuff. So one of the big part of our efforts on talent development today is how do I make the younger generation make stuff? I'll give you an example what we did in Singapore. Singapore celebrated 50 years last year. We did a program along with the government called Invent 50. And the Invent 50 threw a problem at students in universities saying, why don't you respond with a technology-oriented solution to solve a societal problem? And believe me, I was one of the panel of judges, and I was just blown away by the ideas. One of the ideas that, to your point about uniqueness, that came through from the students was, Parkinson's disease patients have something called gates, brain freezes, right? If they can understand gates way before when it happens, they can prevent the fall. A bunch of students got together, used Intel technology, but that's just not the point here. But they used that technology to create a solution which was beneficial for Parkinson's patients to predict the gates. And these are young students. What would you call them? They are truly makers of new technology. Now, they did not spend a lot of time coding. Their objective was to define a business model, of course, code as well, but to define a business model that solves a real-world problem. Technology provides you that option to do that.
Can I jump in there? Can I tell a story? Again.
We love stories.
So, I mean, talking about this, and you're talking about university students. So I was, in Malaysia, Sarawak, you know, Sarawak is this big state and it's got big rivers. And so this group of students again was asked, you know, this is 15-year-olds. What is the problem in your village? It's a rural context. So now we're not kind of taking, you know, smart Singapore students in the city. Rural school, what is the problem in your village? So they figured that the biggest problem was that every year 2 or 3 people would actually be killed by crocodiles. And that's because these big rivers have these logs floating down. They look exactly like a crocodile. So people don't know whether they're crocodiles or logs, and they go near them and then they get eaten. So the kids spend their holidays observing the river and seeing what is the difference. I mean, how can they tell what is a crocodile and what is a log? They finally figured out that a crocodile has to move every 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes, if you can devise something that, you know, detects a movement every 2 minutes, then that's a crocodile. If it's not a crocodile. So they did that. And you know, in that whole process, you know, they had to, as you say, problem solve. They had to solve a problem. They had to then do simple coding as well. I mean, and these are 15-year-olds, so they created a code. And they then had to make the device that could sense this. So in that education, I think, you know, you see the kids then have to think, you know, have to create. They have to collaborate with each other as a group to create this solution. And they learned cross kind of discipline, right? They learned physics, they learned biology, they learned about the environment. You know, I think that this is the way, you know, Minister, maybe you can comment that kids should learn today. You know, I mean, this is, they call it maker education. But, you know, giving a real-life problem, using real-life skills, and then, you know, when you come out of this, you know, you can be, you know, flexible in your jobs.
Yeah, that's true. And even when you raise questions to the students, we need to shift. We used to ask, what do you want to be in the future? And then, you know, our kids started to answer, depend on what they know today. If what they know is a policeman, then I want to be a policeman. If they know is a doctor, I want to be a doctor. We need to shift that into what do you want to do in the future instead of what do you want to be in the futures. And even that questions often, oh my God, what do I want? What do I want to do? That start to think what kind of things that you would like to do. So but come back to that questions on the uniqueness. I think there are 2 things. Number 1 is the way we assess must change. Now we are assessing our students only for us to make us easy, I mean, for us to measure one student to another. And I think, you know, Kathleen mentioned earlier, now it's time for us not to look at simply individuals, but also students as groups, as a team, and that also helps our students to form collaborations with themselves. Number 2, again, the point that our universities, our schools need to invite more to come. If what you invite is only CEOs and successful CEOs, that's again what we imagine is a function of our knowledge. So let's widen our knowledge about what's available out there. If what we invite were individuals who work in a village and make a huge difference and create a meaning, that is also something good. So let's widen. Number 3, let's not assume that being a CEO is a bad thing.
That's true.
Prakash would agree with that, definitely.
I would agree.
Everyone.
Ambition is all about
Yeah,
it.
and I think this is very important, that perhaps there is a point that I want to make a change in the world, and I want to change the way corporation works. I want to change the way relationship between academia and private sectors. And going through that route is something of options. I'll give you an example. We run a project called Indonesia Teaching Program. We invite best university graduates. And this is truly best university graduate. The applicants should be around 10,000, and we accept only 40 to 50 out of 10,000. So very small portions. And we then deploy them as elementary school teachers to village with no electricity, no phone signals, minimum running water. And actually one of her, her daughter was selected into that program. And after they finish 1 year, they come back. I actually asked them, don't go to NGOs. If I may suggest, go to private sectors. Because this project can only work as a cooperation of idea and resources. And the resources come from where? From private sectors. We need people in the private sectors who care about community development, who cares about education. And we need the ambassador. So you go there and be leaders in those corporations, but the leaders who can say, I was once a teacher, and I taught in a village with no electricity when I was young. Yes. But then able to move the institutions. So I think we need to have, to sort of make peace with corporation too, in a way.
Well, you want to make a quick point also?
Yeah, but also just very much to that point.
So this is quite a question from this
Well,
this
going back
audience
to the
member.
question, I don't agree. It's not just going to be repetitive jobs that are going to disappear. Artificial intelligence will take away a lot of intelligent jobs, and this uniqueness that you talk about will be replaced. I would just give an example. For us, in the hotel business, our reservation center, I don't like to use the word call center because it's far more than that. No, it's very important because you establish a rapport between the potential customer and the person who's on the phone. But this is going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. And that will then, employers will say, well, yeah, I would do that because my artificial intelligence piece will work 24/7 and I don't have to pay any wages once I pay the capital cost. So for sure, very intelligent jobs will also disappear. So it's not just about the education of young people as we started from the beginning. It's what do we do about the people who will be displaced? Because it's still a burning question, isn't it?
Since we had such an excellent question from the audience or comment, this gentleman was next. We're running out of time, so very quickly, please, sir.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Nitin Jaiswal. I'm from Bloomberg. And one of the things I do is I do a lot of interviews to hire people. And pretty much every time I see the CV, one of the common themes is always the focus is on technical skills. And the people who have been successful, they realize it's the soft skills which make them successful. But somehow the emphasis in school and with the parents and with the corporations is not so much on the soft skills. And that is the reason why in CVs, nobody writes about soft skills. So how do we make that change happen? Because that every stakeholder has to be involved here, your parents, your teachers, your corporations. How do we get the soft skills out in the open as the key important element to be successful?
May I tackle that question first? Before I do this job, I was a university rector, and the way we did it to answer that question is we have dual transcript of our students. One is the academic transcripts. Two is leadership, entrepreneurship, and extracurricular transcript. So our graduates have both. And I always said to them, your high GPA will get you a job interview, but it's your leadership, your entrepreneurship, your communication skill will get you a job and get you to the top. It's not your GPA. But without high GPA, you're not going to get a call for an interview. So you better combine between the two. And I think, again, assessment. And we don't allow our students to take their final exams before completing a certain credit points for their non-curricular activities. Because that's a must. And go back to what Kathleen mentioned also earlier, about the importance of values, characters. The characters cannot be taught in the classroom.